Have you ever tried learning through the movement of kneading your fingers through dough? Learning through your hands greasing pans with butter, through the sounds of bubbling water on the stovetop, through laughter when the fire alarm goes off because of a smoky kitchen, through slicing up cucumber and avocado, through shaking unbaked biscuits around in a bag of cinnamon sugar, through the dedicated stirring of a soup pot, through your hands creating meatballs from scratch, through smelling and taste testing, through picking out each specific seasoning, through feeling your feet firmly on kitchen tile, through sharing recipes with words rather than handwriting, through listening for the timer, through scrambled eggs and bacon grease, through the art and technique of brewing a pot of coffee, through broiling bread for a little too long, through tasting childhood memories wrapped up in old family recipes, through only being able to flip an egg with 2 spatulas, through mincing up cloves of garlic, through how an entire kitchen sings with sound when someone cooks. Have you ever tried learning through rereading specific cookbook recipes over and over again so you could know them by heart? Learning through washing with soap and a sponge, through the sink strainer collecting parts of your food, through rediscovering the hidden cutting board that's above where your utensils are held, through trying new recipes on a whim, through loading the dishwasher and filling up the dish drying rack, through finding out all the ways to eat potatoes, through rinsing rice under running water, through the dishes that fill up the sink, through sharing and eating with others, through intentionally making food for someone else, through frying latkes with a close friend, through eating food every day. Have you ever tried learning through incorrectly rolling Pillsbury croissants? Learning through tasting nettle pesto for the first time, through rolling cookie dough between your hands, through watching cut up potatoes sizzle in the oven, through cracking eggs over a frying pan, through washing a single dish out of an entire full sink because you're really hungry but just don't have the time to wash all of them, through scooping the insides of a butternut squash out, through simmering brown sugar and butter, through feeding a sister a bite of homemade pasta, through trying a recipe every week until you get it right, through the patience of waiting for an oven to preheat, through barbecuing vegetables under the summer sun, through sharing over a crock pot full of root beer pulled pork, through cooking a meal for your parents. Have you ever tried learning through holding freshly baked bread in your hand? Learning through chewing blueberries between your teeth, through putting peanut butter on bananas and apples, through threading bacon together, through tearing the ends of strawberries, through roasting beets and realizing you like them, through teaching recipes to others, through tearing up every time you chop onions, through eating in your parents' new home, through smelling fish sauce, through starting so many soups with celery, onion, and carrot, through making French toast with sourdough bread, through feeding others, through cooking with your friends and roommates, through eating and savoring, through feeling flavors under and above and around your tongue. Have you ever tried learning through the fullness of your stomach? Have you ever tried learning through the movement of kneading your fingers through dough? I am slowly but surely relearning how to listen to the hum of my belly and what the skin of grapes feels like caught between teeth, and how the fullness in my body grounds me more than emptiness ever could, and what butter sounds like on the frying pan I inherited from the kitchen on 41st Street, and what it means to cook for myself, and what it means to cook for my loved ones, and how to knead dough around my fingers, and how food fills my cheeks and hips and heart a little bit more each time. Relearning rather than learning, because this knowledge and power rested between my sternum and collarbone, and between my cuticle and nail, and between each strand of hair. Watching videos of myself cooking now is honestly pretty inspiring, because growing up, I did not eat a lot of home cooked meals with my family. I lived mostly off of fast food, which there's nothing really wrong with that, but constantly being surrounded by my friends who would have sit down dinners with their parents every night, would have a bunch of family recipes. I grew up always kind of feeling a disconnect there and a disconnect to food, and I always thought food tasted good, but I didn't always understand why it was so important to some folks until where I am now in my life. Food means a lot to me in a lot of different ways. Food is nourishment for my body, it's care for my body. Food and cooking is a way of knowing and relearning histories and ancestral memories. Cooking is a way of reconnecting with my body. I'm constantly talking about kneading dough because for months after I was out of eating disorder treatment, I felt completely disconnected from my body. My body did not feel like mine. I did not know who it belonged to, but it was not mine. I was just kind of inhabiting it and going about with my life. But this past summer, I had decided to make pesto pasta and French bread from scratch, all of it. And it was amazing because it was so time consuming. I did so much with my hands, and I felt my hands. I could feel the blood in my veins. I could just feel my nails digging into the dough, and it felt so good. It felt so good to be present in myself and to know that I was there and that I was making something for myself, and that it was gonna give me energy, strength, and maybe it wouldn't taste that good. I don't know, but the fact that I could do that for myself was just so amazing, and I just want to keep kneading more and more dough. I feel great when I knead dough. Another reason why I love food so much, care about food so much, learn through food is it's a form of connection with other human beings. It's my biggest love language. If I love you, if I care about you, I will make you anything that you want. Anything. It does not matter how difficult the recipe is, I will try it. And it's such a warm feeling to nourish others and share that food, and then to see a friend recreate a recipe again or give it a spin. That's learning, that's teaching, that's pedagogy right there. And beyond all of that, food is healing. Food is healing. You can learn a lot about yourself and your body and your needs through cooking and eating. I started out my Fairhaven journey really dead set on becoming a therapist for queer and trans youth. And I still do have a really strong passion for that because I never had resources like that growing up, and I know how beneficial it is for folks. But also, through Fairhaven, I have learned so much about alternative modes of healing and knowing that cooking with a group of people once a week can be as healing for someone as seeing a therapist once a week, or being on medication, or going to treatment. Like, there is so many expansive ways of taking care of yourself and others. And cooking and eating deserves more thought. I think it's brushed off a lot. Alright, so I won't lie, the reason why I applied to Fairhaven was because I heard you didn't have to take math or science on main campus, and I wanted to absolutely avoid that, considering they were my worst subjects growing up, and I never would have expected the amount of love for science I would have found in Fairhaven. I'm no science nerd or anything, but I really enjoyed taking nature photography with John Bauer and ethnobotany with the other John, because it made me reconnect with earth and nature a lot more and think about my relationship to it and what that looks like with my relationship now with cooking and eating, and thinking about my relationship to the earth and my body and walking around, and thinking about the plants and gardening. Ethnobotany inspired me to garden. I have a garden now in my backyard, and I love it. I love growing my own vegetables and fruit. It's a really awesome feeling. And I never would have gained that confidence or knowledge without Fairhaven, I don't think. I met so many influential folks who taught me so much about food justice and what food sovereignty looks like, and thinking about how all the food systems we live under impact us and how it impacts specific folks. I did a whole project on a trans cookbook and how diet culture specifically impacts trans folks and what they do in order to combat that through food and cooking and eating. I was also just specifically looking at how food and cooking strengthens trans communities and builds resiliency among trans folks, how coming together and cooking for ourselves and each other is an act of resistance against the cisnormative heteropatriarchy that we live within, and how individuals are able to create collective identity and community through cooking, thinking about questions of constructions of home and belonging. And I had a really fun time with it. I ate so much delicious food, and I met so many lovely folks and learned a lot about what it means to resist and be resilient with cooking and eating, and how it's essential to the realm of reclaiming food and nourishment of our bodies. So, in my senior project proposal, I talk a lot about my own personal experiences with food and eating disorders and cooking in bodies, and through the teachings of my peers and friends and educators in my life, I have really starting to understand the healing and rejuvenating power that comes along with community and cooking for yourself and your community. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, I focused my concentration pretty specifically on just counseling for queer and trans youth. Growing up without any mental health resources for myself was super hard, and I always thought about providing that same care and love to other people. But through my own journey in recovery and through dedicating many of my academic projects to better understanding diet culture and how it specifically impacts trans people and what fat liberation can look like and imaginations of that, I've realized how expansive mental health resources can be. Having access to counseling and medication is super important for a lot of folks' mental well-being, but so is cooking and moving your body and sitting in nature, making art, resting your body, conversation. One act of care for your mental well-being doesn't outweigh the other. All are super valid modes of healing. And I'm just realizing how much I want to help folks in any way I can, whether that's in more quote unquote professional settings or in,
Hey, come on.
I don't know what the word would be, quote unquote, I guess less professional, unprofessional settings,
You're creepy.
reconnecting more with nature and our bodies in those different spaces. And so for my senior project, I decided to dedicate it to reading some really important texts and cooking. Big surprise. So the texts that I chose were Health at Every Size by Lindo Bacon, The Fat Studies Reader, edited by Esther Rothblum and Sondra Solovey, Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina Strings, and The Body is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor. And the reason why I picked those books specifically was because much of the concepts and ideas revolve around fatness, fat phobia, eating, and caring for the body. And I felt that in order to understand my own eating disorder and my relationship to food and cooking and my body and how that also ties into my community and how I care for my community, I needed to ground that knowledge with the history of fat phobia, its direct link to anti-blackness, and also understanding the construction of the idea of health within itself. And these texts so far have allowed me to kind of conceptualize and connect how diet culture formed over time and what imaginations of fat liberation can look like. And it's been really great reading them so far. Besides the texts I am also cooking, I picked out specific recipes. I have a couple of bread recipes. I have a lasagna recipe. There's a fun squash salad one. And I picked these mostly at random. I just wanted to do something that was out of my comfort zone and new, because for such a long time I was always making the same food or just not really putting any time or care or love into the food that I was making. It was mostly just like, ugh, I have to eat because I haven't eaten, so I guess I'll just make whatever. But now I take so much time to cook. I take such a long time to prep because I think about how much tenderness I want to go into my food and how I want to feel that when I'm eating it. And now I'm almost done with my Fairhaven career, which feels so strange and bizarre to say out loud. With a concentration in nurturing transformative love and healing for mental health in queer and LGBT communities, which clearly can mean a lot of different things. I don't know what's next for me. For a really long time, I thought the next steps were to take some time off, save up, take a break from school, then get back into it with graduate school. I wasn't even sure what my specific studies were going to be yet, but just knew that that was going to be my path. Probably counseling, but, you know, I was still deciding. And now with so much change and uncertainty in the world, I have no clue. Honestly, I've been thinking a lot about culinary school. That would be pretty sweet. And I just keep thinking a lot about the ways that I can help people right now and serve my communities in the ways that I want to. And I'm doing that with my senior project. I am making food and sanitizing my hands constantly so I can share it around in the community with folks, with friends, with my roommates, because that's what we need. And that's what folks always need in times of resiliency and change. You need food and cooking to bring us together and give us the strength to keep going on. And sometimes it's so messy.
Yeah, you should. You should tweet that.
Can get all over your hands, and you have to wash so many dishes afterwards. But it's worth it.